Okay, so let's resume our conversation here, and we have our red and our green cards here. So let's resume here, and we're going to shift, and we're going to go to another look at this, and we're going to talk about the signs and symptoms. So how exactly is it that we know that we're coming from the human mindset versus the champion's mind? Well, to start off with, is that these parameters remain the same, so we don't need to go through that. So let's now take a look at the signs and symptoms that inform us of the percentage of where we're living where in this here. Number one, so grouchy. If you're grouchy, everybody give me a card, please, red or green. Which card is that? Okay, 100% red. 100% red. Now, I'm going to right now tell you what your human mindset's going to do. Because we're going to go to the opposite side, the human mindset, what color is the champion's mind going to be? Right. And so your human mindset's going to make you think the next time we do this in the next series that it's going to be red and green. You're going to fill it in without thinking. I can guarantee that, like right now, because the human mindset makes all sorts of presumptions about the shortcut that take us away from being in real time. So just to sort of let you know, sort of watch that tendency as we go through this. So let's do another comparison here. So grouchy, gracious. The idea of being gracious and showing up, listening, and responding with dignity is a really important part of this because it inspires trust in the people that you're working with. So let's go now to the human mindset, preoccupied. Preoccupied means that I'm not available. If I don't get what I want, I'm never going to get there. Someone else is going to get in front of the line, and I'm going to be second place. That's the way the fear-based survival instinct is looking at this. It's not coming at it from, am I honoring my gifts? Am I making a contribution? Because that's not what the human mindset's all about. It's all about surviving. Self-surviving. It's the game of musical chairs. I know something, I'm not going to tell you. Because when the game goes off, I'm the one that's going to be left standing. That's the way the human mindset works. That's not a good way to live a life of tranquility being. It's not going to happen. So when we look at this idea of preoccupied and we talk about omnipresence, two different things. And what I do know about prolific achievers is that the prolific achievers always have time for everybody that they know is showing up out of respect and not to use them and abuse the privilege of standing in their presence. And they always show up early. They don't show up late. Or if they're going to show up late, they always inform well in advance so there are no surprises because they know that time respected shows the highest respect to the parties that they're involved in, no exceptions. They know that if they show up late and they show up hurried and rushed, or they were too sloppy and lazy to show up on time, that was an abuse of the relationship. They know that. And so therefore the trust goes down and the credibility goes down as well. So when we talk about this idea of signs and symptoms, anxious, anxiety is a sign that we're in the human mindset. But I do want to make a distinction here is that performance anxiety is actually a state of readiness that you have to have. When you're going to that point where you got to push the green button, step onto the playing field for real, the rehearsals are over, you're stepping onto the field, there's live ammo now, it's not like rubber bullets, it's like live ammo. Yeah, there's going to be some nervousness and sweaty palms, but if you're well rehearsed and you're well prepared, and you know that because you have the evidence of that, that's a performance anxiety that's actually going to help you. So there's a little bit of a distinction there, but if it's low-grade chronic, then that's a sign and symptoms that the day in life is not being managed correctly. And therefore the counterpoint to that would be like composure. Do we always have time for family to listen? Yes or no? And do we have time to feel the question, or do we have the graciousness to say, unfortunately, at this point, I cannot talk to you now because I have another obligation to fulfill, but let's touch base then. That's completely acceptable because it shows, again, dignity, which is a demonstration of what the champion's mind actually does. So how we show up does matter, and it does influence our credibility, and it does create an alternative to the way that we see many people living in today's world that may not be empowering them, and it certainly may not be empowering other people. Because look, this isn't just about us. It's about humanity. See that person in the back of the room? Christine, would you stand up? This is my wife. She's the best 65-year-old on the planet. So, oh, sorry. Okay, I'll hear about that later. Oops. So if I show up sulking, you'll understand why. So we adopted our daughter 12 years ago from Colombia at the age of 10. Very unusual adoption, but just to say, if you, and she had a very, very challenging upbringing, to say the least, but just to say that if you think that what you say and what you do and how you show up matters, adopt a kid. Because they hang on every word, every picture that could be taken of you every second. That matters to them. And if you want to affect change, most important thing is think about how you're going to show up. And so I have a question for you. Like, who's the real you? Is the real you that puts your personal self aside, that you work out on your own time, and you show up the best of you for others? Or is the real you the one that shows up and however you feel is what other people have to deal with? We have to make that choice every day. How are you going to show up? Well, that's not the way I really feel. I was afraid of the competition, so I just quit the competition. I decided, it was more important that I honor how I felt than showing up for other people and freaking getting the job done. So I just want to say here that we need to be mindful about how we display and how we transmit, because the gifts that we give transcend what we get back. And how much is trust in seeing the manifestation? Like when we adopted, our task was not to save a life. Yeah, we were doing that, but we wanted to manifest the potential, because she didn't ask for what she got. It's 1,000 times worse than anything you've ever had by a factor of 1,000,000. It's like we wanted to manifest the potential. Took everything we got and had for 12 years to do that. But you got to make your life count for something of value. So all I'm saying here is that when you show up composed, you're saying something to other people that probably has something of tremendous humanitarian value that I don't know if you could put a price on it. So when we talk about these signs and symptoms, there's a story like behind it. This is what gives us confidence as well. We show up outside of ourselves. We believe that we can do it. We need these kind of reminders of self-belief that give us a hope, that keep us in the game at moments where we may be fragile. We've all been there. I was there raising my daughter. I was at my limit, for sure, because of the challenge that it posed to us on every side of it. But yet, look, when life is too easy, too good, there's no reason to change. And every one of us has got something inside of us that's a much higher value to ourselves and what we can do and the richness of life that we live and how it impacts others. But if life is too good, we're too self-absorbed, that will never surface, because there's no reason for it to surface. So again, the idea of composure and presence of being really does matter. When we come back to this conversation about the signs and symptoms, sleep deprived, I think that speaks for itself. That's self-evident. We can handle a couple of days of sleep deprivation. That's okay. When we have consistent enough sleep, we expect that. 1 or 2 days or a week isn't going to make any difference whatsoever. If we know that we pay back the debt consistently, we're not going to sweat the small stuff there. So the sleep refreshed, as long as that happens enough, where we are able to maintain our sobriety of thought and our presence of being, then we kind of stay in good shape here. Negativity, there's certainly no shortage of that on this planet. And positivity, this may seem obvious, but the question is, how often do you really think about this? You know, and are we this? Do we embody this? I think that's the bigger question here. Because if we're embodying this, then it's being transmitted, and we're benefiting from it for the creation of our own life value, but also we're demonstrating that, like, for other people. When we talk about stingy, that's a sign, you know, well, maybe I'll give them a 10% tip or whatever. You know, like I was in the Amazon, so I gave the Indigenous tribe $500. I mean, what's $500 to them is like a year's salary. You know, big deal. I mean, $500, who cares? Give them $2,000, whatever. I just feel like, you know, there's something about the idea. See, here's the deal. Like, a lot of the things you think you need, you don't really need them. These are like Lucky Charms and rabbit's feet. You know, these are something you're putting in a lockbox as a safety valve. I quite honestly think sometimes we should throw all that stuff away to learn to stand on our own. You know, I was working with an athlete once, and I told he just wasn't performing at the level that he was supposed to perform at. This is when I was working with athletes. And I said, don't take your vitamins for a month. What do you mean? You're trying to kill me? I need my vitamins to, you know, how am I going to perform? I said, no, you're relying way too much on your vitamins. You know, you're empowering your vitamins to do for you what you should be doing for yourself. Don't take your vitamins. You don't have enough self-trust. You're the one that shows up. You know, I was working with Lance. You know, Lance was in Austin, so we were at a training camp together, and he came into the hotel room at the camp, and he said, do you have anything to eat? I didn't have anything to eat. So he looked at this little basket on the table. You know, you see those in the hotel rooms? What are in those baskets? Pringles, Snickers, and some of these other things. And he was looking at it. What do you think he was thinking when he was looking at it? Should I eat it? You know, and satiate a little bit? Or should I starve and have a perfect diet? What do you think he did? Ate it. Yeah, he ate it. Because he knew the candy bar wasn't going to make the difference. It was up to him to show up and get the job done. So I sort of feel like, you know, if we can live a life of abstinence to some degree and strip ourselves from all the stuff that we think that we need, you know, then you're going to find another level of invincibility. Because we had that with our daughter. It was so difficult that I kind of feel like we went without just about everything for like 10 years. I mean, everything. The day that we brought her home, I said to my wife, look, she doesn't speak English and we don't speak Spanish. We don't have a language here. I said, she's 10 but no school. America, you decide graduate school when you're 3 months old. You know, I said she got PTSD and ADHD from severe malnutrition and severe abuse. Those are formidable foes here. Parasitic-ridden body. I mean, this is like every risk factor known to humanity on a scale of 1 to 10. She's 1,000 on every one of them. So I said, look, you know, I have to reduce my professional availability by 90% starting today, which means 90% of our income was gone overnight. I didn't care about that, because when you get called into service, you show up and you get the job done. You don't play a bronze medal game with that, you know? So I didn't put anything into my retirement for over 10 years. Still haven't. If that's what it takes, that's what you do. Because you don't want to leave the field feeling like you could have done something, or you played the musical chairs game. You don't want to leave the field like that. So what I was getting to with this idea of invincibility, I kind of feel like I could live in a cot in the corner of a room. That would be great, as long as I had a top, best bike on the planet, bicycle, you know, with a computer and a chair and a table. I'd be great. Because as long as I have my mind and my freedom, I can do anything. You know, the other stuff doesn't matter. You spend the first half of your life collecting a bunch of junk and the second half trying to get rid of it. So I sort of feel like if we look at the stuff that we're relying on to make up for us what we should be doing for ourselves, that we maybe abstain from that just for a little bit to regain some personal confidence back. And that's why, you know, the idea of being stingy with ourselves and other people, you know, there's a freedom in giving up what we think that we need, because you probably don't need it. So you can experiment with that just a little bit, but just to say that self-reliance isn't on the encumbrance of things more than it is to be agile and trust in self and being able to find your ability to move forward. You want to stay lean and mean, you want to stay in the game over time. So the idea of generosity plays a huge, let me say this, anonymous generosity plays a really big part of this. Because again, when we give something away, ask yourself, did I really need that? After we kind of experiment with a little bit. And we watch the human mindset response to, I don't know if I should do this, maybe I should give half as much, whatever. Kind of watch the bartering that goes on inside, just as a chance to really see the human mindset in action. And then, when you take the champion's mind route, just sort of evaluate what that feels like in the post-mortem, like the day after, and see what that's like. So this idea here of signs and symptoms, are you reckless? Like, hey, I'm just going to do anything to make this happen. I got to go back. I got to go all in. I lost some stuff. I want to get it back all at once. You know what that's like, right? That's like terrifying. That now you're accountable. Maybe let me go all in. Let me get it back, man. I just want to get back to what it was. I'll do anything to get back the way that it was. Can I take back the last 5 minutes? God, how can I do? Can I take it back? Maybe this is just a dream. I know the drill because we're all human. We all share the same thing. So the idea is to be highly responsible in the choices that we're making in advance. And if you don't know what that is, get good counsel. Don't try to do it yourself. Get good counsel. Have somebody show you what this means, what the choices are, why the choices should be taken. There's only one best choice at any moment to take. And so when we continue to talk about this idea of signs and symptoms, if you're haggard versus vital, it means that you're on borrowed time, and it's always best to pull back before the detonation goes off. We refer to that in the past, but I think that it's certainly something that we need to be continuously reminded of. Other than, it hasn't hurt me so far. You know how many people have said that, and then they die from a heart attack or a stroke? And then finally, if we engage life through this, you're going to be an underperformer. No question about it. If the tank's empty, you cannot mind over matter it. You can't will yourself to do something that you do not have the capacity to deal with it. It just absolutely will not happen. But of course, your human mindset's going to tell you you're just not pushing hard enough. Try to do another push harder. And as I tell my daughter, there's always time to ruin it. So again, just be mindful of that axiom as well. And these are the standard things that we always know that are part of the futility of living life through our survival experiences. And as we said before, it always ends up in being a consistent, predictable, repeat winner when we apply the things that history has confirmed to us to be true, which is based on courage, composure, and exception. So those are the things that I wanted to share with you, just to be mindful of, that kind of give us an insight and a clue as to where we are. Now, we're going to go through a final segment here as we start to wind down. And I want to talk about the variables now between the human mindset and the champion's mind. Everybody got enough steam to be attentive through the rest of this? Light bulbs on? Full luminosity? Fantastic. Okay, so here we go. So we know that this is the same, we know that this is the same, so we're not going to deal with it. But what I want to say about the human mindset, be really clear about one thing, is that the human mindset is the not you imposter. This is your imposter. And it may seem like you think that it's you because you're the one taking action on those default beliefs that get first dibs at every moment of our existence. But be really clear, that's not you. And as I said earlier, I've never met a person that fills out an application to request the opportunity to have a conversation about my providing advisory to them that hasn't said that they're the problem. But you know why they say they're the problem? Because they've identified with the human mindset. You know what happens when we believe the human mindset is us? You're freaking done. You are done. Because you're not going to get beyond it as long as you believe the mythology of that. But that's what I want you to believe. Because its deal is, I want you to survive. I could care less about your excellence. So let's be really clear on this, is that sometime when your back is against your wall, you're only going to have one thing that's going to keep you in the game. And that's going to be your knowledge that the way you're thinking and the way that you're taking action on, the stuff that you're thinking, dark thoughts, that's the not you. You, the observer that's watching this happen, are two different things. Let's really be mindful of that. Is that a deal? Because if you don't have a moment like that, you're playing life way too much in the safe zone. Let's just face it. And it's like everybody's going to have their Lance moment. You know, Lance had literally like a death sentence cancer diagnosis for sure. And so you get real serious, you get real quick, you know, when you face something like that. And every one of us is going to have that. And maybe it's our best moment because it sobers us up a little bit. But the point is that I always want you to be thinking every moment of your life, is this a red card item? Is this a green card item? The green is the real you. The red is the not you. You didn't ask for this. We've talked about the biology, right? You did not ask for this. This is part of the human condition and the human experience. It's just the way that it is. So we have to look at this in a sensible way that makes sense about it. Okay? Next, here, is that the real you is the manifester, the green side of it. We're born to manifest. But you can't manifest if you're living life through human mindset. It's not possible. And this is our inclination. But you can't get here through this. You can't do it. It's not possible. No amount of positive thinking can get you there. There's an action side to this. I'm all for affirmations. I'm all for gratitude journals. But what I want for you guys is that I want you to have a battle hard readiness, where every day you step onto the pavement of life as it's unfolding moment by moment. And you take that journey properly armed because you put the shoulder pads on, you prepared yourself well to engage the day, and you knew the battle that was coming. Because some of these other skills are preparatory. I get that. But when you step onto the field where the live ammo is flying, where people get hurt and blood flows, there's another side to it that you got to have. You got to read it in real time. You have to know how to read what's in front of you so you don't get injured or killed. There has to be a different state of readiness here. And that's what this conversation is all about. Do you think that Bono, Richard Branson, Tiger, Lance, some of the people that I spent time with, do you think that they don't have this in their life? They do. They do. I know that because I've been with them. There is no distinction. There are no free passes from the human experience. This is how we're hardwired. But of course, our human mindset says, you know, they're somehow born something different. Yeah, well, maybe they're suited towards being a Navy SEAL. I get that. But we can't say that that's any more significant than perhaps the thing that you said in a kindergarten room that the kids listened to that shaped their life. We don't know that. Let's not decide what that is or the value of our experience. Let's not compare ourselves against other people. What are we best suited for? Knowing that there's no exemption from this. There are no free passes, ever. It's a matter of being able to get better at reading the terrain as we go. And we want to compress the timeline rather through experimentation that inflicts immense amounts of unnecessary pain on us. Let's have the capacity to see what's coming. Well, if you don't know, well, then you need counsel to figure out what this is, so you don't learn it the hard way. So when we talk about, let's be just really clear about who the real you is. Because you know it, that doesn't give you a free pass over this. This has got to be applied to override this because this is on 24 hours a day. It's just the way it is. Is there a point when you ever arrive? No. I'm 70. It's not over for me yet. You know, I'm still in there slugging it out day in and day out. Yeah, I'm a couple decades farther along than you are. Well, that means I can show you what not to do, right? So, again, this is stalking you 24/7. Just know that. This beast right here is stalking you. can't get away from it. It's really seductive. It's very clever. But the good news is that you need to apply this to maintain what you got. And as I said earlier, it doesn't take as much time and effort to keep what you got as it did to get it in the first place. Next, there's an infinite number of default beliefs. We talked about some just to warm ourselves up to the idea, but there's an infinite number of them. And when it comes to the infinite number of the stories that we're telling ourselves every day, I do know this in the human mind, is that there's one path to excellence as I see it, and I've shared with you what the 5 elements are that make that up. That's kind of been revealed, to me over the last 50 or 60 years being in this high performance space. Every one of us has got a personal imposter profile. We all have certain inherent vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Those things that we keep repeating that we just can't get beyond. So, maybe there's, 6 to 10 of them, who knows. But just to only say that every one of us has got our own prescription. Is that right? That would be our own diagnosis. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And so just be mindful that we don't need to worry about all of them, but we need to kind of know where our highest points of vulnerability are. And there's an infinite variety of them, but I can also say that in the human mindset, final say override of these is that the restraints are what rule, and we listed some of those restraints in our conversation about it, but just to say that for every moment of every day, there's a perfect restraint to be able to override it, to carry momentum forward. And part of life is to learn the art and science of that. And that's kind of what I've dedicated my life to with the clients and the people that I work with, is to decode their personalized profile so that we can restore hope in ourselves and belief that we can manifest what our potential happens to be and live a life of tranquility, being and contribution. Because that is possible. But it's not possible if you engage life through this. Not possible. Okay? And then it's also forever changing. As we're evolving as a human, every decade we're looking at life slightly differently, which means that the boogeyman is going to be showing up in different forms over time. It's not going to be the same thing. He wants to stay one step ahead of us to keep us confused and to keep us in survival. And as long as we're in survival, we're not thinking clearly. And we're violating the most important thing, that we're not coming from our champion's mind. And it's the survival side of us knows that. So this is really about forever overriding the first dibs through the application of the champion's mind. And again, we haven't and don't have time to go through everything, of course. But what we are doing here is that we're setting up a case to be made to make life understandable. Do you feel like you understand life a little bit better through our conversation today? Do you? Can I see a raise? I'm just curious. Do you feel like you understand yourself and life a little bit better? Okay, that's what I want to see there. Okay, great. All right. And for those of you that didn't raise a card, let me know how I could. Now, I'm serious about this. I don't want anybody leaving this weekend without feeling like they've had a chance to look at what their personal questions may be. Is that fair? All right, perfect. And so, at the very best, again, if you come through the human mindset, you've got a terminal low bar, just the way it is, because you can't get to here, through the human mindset. It's absolutely not possible. And of course, we know what that means. We're not going to repeat these words again because you've heard enough, but it remains the same. And if we come through the champion's mind, again, we can see that it kind of always ends in being a repeat winner, prudent, prolific, and extraordinary. So, we're at the end of our conversation today, and it's only taken 60 years to figure this out. It took an Olympics, it took postgraduate degrees, it took almost 50 years in the high performance coaching space to start to see what this really is, against the mythology of what it's presumed to be. But I think we all know that we're capable of more. We know something's missing. And my hope is that we've scratched the surface on demystifying the why behind the inability for us to proceed ahead in why we feel so conflicted. And if we start to understand that there's a biology behind this and we have a capacity, then we start to have one grain of something that doesn't need to be significant to keep us in the game, and that's called hope. One little bit of hope here that keeps us in the game is the starting of a metamorphosis to be able to live a life of value and contribution. So with that being said, Nick, if you'd like me to conclude, we can wrap this up right now, however you would like me to proceed.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, and then we'll stand up and take a very, very short break. When COVID hit, I have a partner, Dan, and what we did was we said, hey, let's bring Rachel on to talk to people about what's coming for the economy. Rachel, her maiden name is Mellon, BNY Mellon. So she's the Mellon of BNY. Said, hey, let's make this free. Let's pull her on. They'll be fully transparent. They do the Monte Carlo simulations, and they can tell you here's the most likely thing to happen moving forward. Maybe 20 people showed up. Simultaneously, same day, no offense to anybody here, 30-something-year-old internet marketer says, I'm going to tell you how to deal with COVID. Hundreds of people show up. Right. And I posted, and I was like, I'm legitimately curious. We have Bank of New York, billions of dollars of data that they're sharing. And you guys went to the internet marketing guy, right, with zero data. Why? And they said, honestly, the people that you've been bringing on are intimidating. Certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. A lot of people have an opportunity to actually level up. Not play level up, like Playhouse, like actually level up. And I won't be paying attention. You guys do whatever you do. No judgment here. If you do not take the next 2 days to try and get his time, I do not believe you want to level up. And that's okay. But I'll call it out right now to everybody. You're the one chasing the internet marketers around, and it's not like it's like there's some phenomenal internet marketers around. But there is a chasing of, this is where I'm comfortable, and it's a whole bunch of people, a whole crowd of people saying, yeah, we're gonna all get rich together, and they're finding all these ways to keep each other right in the same spot. So this is a rare opportunity, in my opinion, to have that individual hanging out with us for 2 days. I implore you, if you're serious about, yeah, I'm gonna make $30 million in Floki or $1 billion in Bitcoin, if you actually want to do that, this is how you inform. I'm informing your behavior. Find time. Just find time to spend with Jeff.
I'll just finish by saying there's always room at the top for the best. Thanks, everybody. I hope you learned something. Let me know what you're thinking. Thank you.